All right, the recording has started.
Thank you. This is a meeting of the Police Commissioners Advisory Committee. It's Monday, March 30th at 7 o'clock in the evening. My name is Paul Yee. I'll be chairing the meeting today. Why don't we go around the room and just introduce each of the members and the non-voting members too.
I'm Ron Wilkinson. I am co-chair of the PCAC.
I'm John Hilliard, a member of the PCAC and town meeting member from Precinct 11.
I'm Scott Nanian, town meeting member from Precinct 10 and a member of the PCAC.
Scott, you are just outside the camera. I cannot see
I'm
you.
gonna talk to the other side, John. See my beautiful face.
Are there any members on Zoom, Sarah?
I'm sorry, excuse me?
Are there any members on Zoom?
There is Michael Grootman and Susan Harris.
Oh, sure. Hi. Good evening, everyone. Jen Hafter, Chief of Police.
Lieutenant Joseph Amagola, Office of Professional Responsibility, Brookline PD.
However, it's Chief Lova, the Prime Minister for Brooklyn PD.
Russ O'Neill, Community Service Division Deputy Superintendent, non-voting member of the PCAC.
Thank you.
And I suppose we can introduce Ann also.
Oh, yes.
Ann Braga, HR Director, Town of Brookline, HR Advisor to the PCAC.
And Susan Harris is on too.
Good evening, Susan Harris, Associate Town Council.
Great. Oh, Christine,
Yes, Christine just joined us.
did you identify yourself? I'm sorry.
I will.
She's muted too.
She is muted. I can ask her to unmute.
I'm here. Hi.
We're just going around the room, identifying each other.
Okay, is it my turn?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Perfect. Christine Knopf, town meeting member 15, commission member.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is any public comments, sir?
I didn't receive any requests for public comment. There are some, at least one person online that may want to raise public comment. I remind everyone that this is now a time for public comment that is not on, for things that are not on the agenda.
Let's introduce him. Michael Gropinger, I believe, is the vendor for the, well, maybe we can wait until that part of the meeting.
Right.
Yeah, okay, we'll wait till that part of the, okay.
And the next item is approval of the minutes. And these are the draft minutes of February 23, 2026, which was our last meeting. Any changes to it? Amendments?
It's Chris. The only thing I see on the minutes is that they're stating that Joe Figler was in attendance, and I think he's no longer with us.
That might have been a mistake I made when I was moving them into Civic Plus. I can edit that out. So if somebody wants to make the motion as minutes as amended, I can make that change before they're posted.
I can make that motion.
Thank you. Second, please. That was Christine.
Second.
Second, John. And Ron?
For the vote, yeah,
Yes.
Ron Wilkinson votes aye.
Scott?
Scott Nanian votes aye.
John?
John Hilliard, aye.
Christine?
Hi, Christine.
And the chair votes aye also. And the next item we have is a report of the Brookline Police Department annual report, and it's going to be presented by Chief Pastor.
Chief, give me a second and I will share my screen.
Excellent. Thank you.
From beginning. Just let me know when you're ready to move ahead and I'll go ahead and I can move ahead one side. I'm sorry, I just want to I can't hear anything right now.
Do you mind if I just hit the?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nope, that was driving me crazy. Appreciate it.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
So does anybody else meant to start now, or, you know?
Yeah, are we waiting for something?
I thought I was waiting on Sarah, but if she's ready.
No,
then-
if you can see my screen, we're ready to go.
Oh, okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sorry.
No. Hearing is growing increasingly difficult. Just one of the things. Well, as I just stated, I don't know if anybody new has joined, but my name is Jen Pastor. I'm the Chief of Police here in Brookline. Co-presenting this with our crime intelligence analyst, Rose Sikova. Hi there. So close. Please correct me. Sichikova. That's what I said. So tonight's presentation is meant to provide an overview of our 2025 annual report, which Rose has pulled together for us. I'm very grateful for all of the work that she does. She is also instrumental in pulling this PowerPoint together. So basically, we're just going to cover what the data shows us from calendar year 2025, what's driving it, in our opinion, and what it means for public safety overall here in Brookline. So at its core, this work reflects our mission, which is delivering fair, impartial, high-quality policing while working in partnership with the community to prevent crime and reduce fear, and that includes all of you here at PPAC. So I thank you all for your service. Okay, next.
Yeah, sorry.
I said, no, don't be. I appreciate it. Okay, so this is a high-level view, 2025 crimes, activities, and calls for service. Part A crimes were down just 3%. Again, you know, in Brookline, we're pretty fortunate to have a relatively low number of crimes. So we'll talk about numbers and we'll talk about percentages, but you have to kind of bear in mind, especially when it comes to things like homicide. You know, you might see what looks like a sharp increase in percentages, when in fact it's going from 0 to 1. So Part A crime is down roughly 3%. Arrests are up 28%. Our calls for service are down 14%. So while we're seeing less overall crime reported to us, we are taking more enforcement action where required. About 20% of our calls for service are related to fire and EMS assistance. Our officers, just by the nature of what we do, being out on the street, are, you know, as opposed to stationed in a house, are usually first on scene, and we can start CPR, administer Narcan, stabilize situations before our fire EMS partners arrive. And at that time, we, you know, either shift to allowing them to provide a higher level of care, and our responsibilities might shift to scene management or traffic control and things like that. Part A crimes, just as a reminder, include murder, rape, robbery, assault, burglary, larceny, and motor vehicle theft. Next. So these numbers I just mentioned, broken down a little bit further, might be a little bit more interesting to some here as we watch the trends over time. Violent crime actually increased for us 17%, while property crime decreased. It reflects a shift. I think what we're seeing more like people-centered incidents or conflicts, including.
Sorry.
Oh,
So
where'd you go?
sorry.
It's okay.
I don't know what I did, but it just disappeared. All right, sorry.
I'm gonna blame Michael Grovich. But it reflects a shift we saw last year towards people-centered incidents or conflicts, including domestic violence and other assaultive types of behaviors. Property crime continues to decline, but again, you know, it's all relatively small numbers that we're talking about. The majority of our assaults involved domestic partners or parties that are known to one another. We don't have a lot of random violent crime. And the primary causes or reasons behind our larcenies are both shoplifting and package theft related. We did, as I mentioned, have one homicide. We'll talk about that a little bit further. It's important to note that Brookline remains a very low violence community historically. It's a very safe place to live. for the arrest data. So in 2025, we had 313 arrests, which was up 28%. Again, significant if you keep that in context with crime being down. This slide shows the arrests broken down by race and gender because historically this is what we've been asked for. If the committee wishes to not see this in the future or see it presented differently, we're certainly open to that. What's interesting, I think, to me, and hopefully to you too, is that 76% of our arrests involve non-residents of Brookline. And juvenile arrests are less than 1% of our arrests. We had a total of 3 last year. 2 of them were involved in the same incident. A third was arrested with somebody who was over the age of 18. Juvenile crime over the past several years has remained very low. And if you're not aware, for purposes of mass criminal law, juvenile is defined as anyone between the ages of 12 and 18. Overall, our numbers have stayed pretty consistent over time. The arrests we're making are not for minor behaviors, but usually involve serious offenses, including armed robbery, domestic violence, firearms related charges, and warrant related incidents. And a lot of our arrests, I think roughly 80% overall, are mandated by law or policy. And that's true with our juvenile. The demographic data with regard to our juveniles is consistent with what we're seeing in the adult population as well, where 70% of the juveniles involve non-residents. We're talking about small numbers. 2 are non-residents, 1 is a resident. So I think the next slide is the breakdown of arrests. Again, just a breakdown of resident, non-resident, and by race. We're good, we can keep going. These are the types of crimes that people were arrested for, again, broken down by resident and non-resident. Domestic violence, we had a lot of warrant arrests for non-residents. OUIL, OUID, that's operating under the influence of either alcohol or drugs.
Just
Oh, sure.
the domestic violence non-resident would be presumably non-residents who are involved in some way with a resident of Brookline.
Not necessarily. We have people fighting, in stores, getting into conflicts in the car, maybe passing through.
Okay.
If a crime occurs in Brookline.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Did you say next slide?
Please. All right, so this is sort of a long-term look at Part A crimes and arrests. Over the past 3 years, our clearance rates have remained pretty consistent. If you pay close attention, the number of arrests have decreased a little bit, and we're shifting a little bit more when appropriate towards a summons, jail diversion, or alternate resolutions, wherever we can. So it's not that we're doing less or solving less, it's just we're looking at different ways that might make more sense in certain situations to resolve issues. But we remain at about 48% of our Part A crimes being cleared. I think last year was 48%. We are ahead. Somebody asked this question at the advisory committee, and we are ahead of what we're seeing nationally in terms of clearance rates. Typically, violent crime clearance rates are about 50 to 55%. Work property crimes, let me get back to you on that, are just under 20%. So our clearance rates for property crime are much higher than we're seeing nationally. And assaults is really where the bulk of our crime is. They're a little bit harder to resolve. Okay.
I guess while you're paused there, since I was just trying to search for it in the report. I've asked in the past about clearance rate from previous years. Seems like I don't know if we have had good reporting on sort of cold case clearance percentages. So of the we cleared 48% of the 52% of cases, which we didn't clear in this year. How many of those, well, I mean, retrospectively, how many of those are we likely to ever manage to clear? Yeah, I don't know if the numbers in there.
No, it's not in there because I was thinking about it when I was looking at clearance rates. We don't necessarily match clearance rates for calendar year, the crimes committed for the calendar, like
Yeah,
do a 1-for-1.
I've asked this in the past, and it's like, I think the numbers we presented when I asked in the past are for sort of cases that we cleared this calendar year, but there's a kind of black for things.
Exactly. I think the short answer is we don't have those exact numbers, at least at the ready. No.
I'm asking.
But there is oftentimes, especially when you're looking at crimes that, you know, are committed in, say, December, you know, right, it moves into the next calendar year. And we'd have to look at, I don't know how we track that.
It's more requests for future, because I've been doing this a while. It's a question that I
Yeah, like an
for
update.
future reports, trying to figure out how to account for, both to give you credit for cases that you do solve, you solve in January, the case happened in December, as well as getting an idea of, you know, what happens to our cold cases in general.
And it'd be interesting to track because there's a lot of interesting stuff going on the forensic side, like forensic science side. With cold cases, so I think it would be interesting thing to start tracking.
I have a question. Just about property part, the shoplifting. So from time to time, I see in our Facebook page and also being like the contact and whatever, pictures of persons of interest for shoplifting. How many of those gets clicked?
So specifically from the Facebook posts.
Yeah, or
That I'm not sure, you know, out of the like ID wanted posts or, but.
Yeah, I couldn't give you a number. I mean, I can say generally speaking, it has been a helpful tool and it gets mixed reactions from people online, whether you think we should or shouldn't be doing it. I think is up for public debate, but it has yielded some positive identifications.
Right.
Then obviously, you know, if somebody gives us a name or a location, you know, we do further vetting to make sure they are, you know, we don't issue a warrant based on, you know, a Facebook tip that somebody is who they say, it leads are helpful. In addition to our own social media, on occasion, our detectives will use more publicly available sites like Mass Most Wanted, other online forums. That can yield positive outcomes. But in terms of numbers, it's not data that we keep specifically or track specifically.
I have a question and I cannot figure out how to raise my hand.
Is that Sarah?
Is there a legal definition of what a cold case is? Because if a case happens like you said in like December and isn't solved until the following like let's say it takes a year to solve the case or it's 13 months, is that technically a cold case that was solved, or like what is a cold case?
My understanding of it is that it's determined to have gone cold when all investigative leads are exhausted.
Okay.
I'm struggling to get these words out. I think the deputy might be looking to confirm that definition.
I'm trying to.
But that's my working understanding of it, is that like all leads have been exhausted. They're kind of at a dead end.
So it might also be
We don't
difficult
close
to
it out, but we just leave it kind of dormant until something new, like hopefully all this emerging technology with regard to DNA.
So it might be difficult to also track cold cases because not cases that aren't necessarily solved in the same calendar year or aren't dead. They're just still being worked. So
Yeah, I mean, if I could just to clarify my request, I think like the statement that appears in the report is of the 739 Part A crimes that were reported and occurred in 2025, they were this many cleared by this, right? All I'm really asking for is one more number that says, in addition, X number of crimes from previous years were cleared or something like that. So breakdown, you know, the number of crimes that were not reported and occurred in 2025. Does that also answer your question, Sarah?
It does. I just want to make sure that like we're asking of the PPD something that they can provide, because it, like, if they're actively working a case and it's just taking longer than a year to solve, but they still have active leads, like, is that, how would they classify that? That's all I'm saying.
No, I think it's a good clarification to have. We wouldn't, if we're still working it, it wouldn't be cold, even if it's, you know, if we're working it for 3 years, it's not cold, it's still active. You know, but there's not like, we don't mark it cold at 30 days since the last lead. It's a little bit subjective. But let's see what we can do for next year. Moving violations. All right, so slight decrease in the number of moving violations issued. Issued 4,650, down from just over 5,000 last year. There's the breakdown by race of who received moving violations, and also by gender.
I don't know if the next one is parking violations, but it looks like parking violations are slightly up. So
Yes, I think the next one is parking violations.
Are you ready to move on?
Yeah, other than just kind of a short sentence to say the moving violations, you know, we're working with other surrounding cities and towns and even police departments across the nation to kind of get ahead of, or not ahead of, get a handle on enforcement with regard to e-bike, scooters, mopeds, different mobility, you know, modes of transportation that we're seeing that are rolled out, I mean, before the laws are in place to address the violations that we see.
we don't have any breakdown. Do we have a further breakdown of, I'm remembering what previous folks who've come to these hearings, members of the public have asked about. Someone was very concerned about tickets for bicycle related incidents, right? Like parking in a bike lane, or two bicyclists themselves for violating the rules, or for acting in a way that was harmful to a bicyclist. I think that member of the public probably had a vested interest there, but I do wonder if there's if there are any more detail we could get on types of moving violations. I don't know if it's better.
I don't know, can we break out the 6-1, you know, more than it is? I know they changed the format for submitting to the RMV, which, so some of the data that we collected historically, specifically with regard to residents versus non-residents, is no longer being captured, because it would require an extra person or two to go through all of them.
And then some of that, like a bike lane parking violation, right? So you take the double parked car in a bike lane. The officer may cite that as a parking violation, which may be appropriate in many situations, and that we would have no idea what that it was a bike lane they were blocking specifically, just because it's not annotated. It's not, it's not done that way.
Yeah, I think the next slide is parking violations and parking revenue are related to that.
Oh,
Nope, got ahead of myself, but yeah.
There's a bicycle.
Yeah, so we do break it down, when we do the crash reports, the majority of our crashes, as you can see there, the blue pillar are, car v car. But we do keep track of how many are involved a pedestrian, a bicycle. And, bicycle versus pedestrian is captured in a traffic crash, usually too, that's called into us. That number remains pretty steady. I'm not gonna go crazy over a 0.08% decrease from the year before. But these come in, either people call us to report the crashes, and sometimes officers are out on detail or out of patrol, and they come across on site a crash, and they'll call in. Sometimes it's just as simple as helping people exchange papers, and other times it's a more detailed crash report that goes to the emergency. Now I think we're good. There we go. So Yes, this is an issue that we're trying to work through with the Transportation Board and the Transportation Division of the DPW. So as you can see, we have written more parking violations, so we did write more in 2025. But the revenue is down and we're working collaboratively to try to get to the bottom of that. We have had a lot of issues with Passport in the parking meter systems. A lot of broken meters are being reported.
Seems like a lot of people are not paying their tickets.
Some people are not paying their tickets. That's not necessarily a new thing though, but if people are getting tickets, when they report that they've fed the meter or paid on the app or whatever, you know, we're trying to work, to get to the bottom of you know, what meters are out of service and if that's happening, why it's happening.
There haven't been any changes in our relationship with the meter vendor or anything that would.
So the again, the Transportation Board, we're the enforcement arm. The Transportation Board rolls out, they pilot new meters. I think there are currently 3 different vendors in town, if I have that correctly. If I have that correct, so, it's a little complicated, but from my understanding, there'll be a working committee, you know, and put together in short order to try to get to the bottom of what's going on and the discrepancies between if we're writing more tickets. Why the revenue isn't where it's supposed to be.
There's also when these numbers are pulled, it's pulled in January. And so you do have again that window, that buffer window of people haven't paid their ticket yet, it's not due yet, and that kind of thing.
The short story I'm getting from you is like you're doing your side, you're writing the tickets, and something is falling down on actual collection or something else.
Yeah.
And is that, do you know if that's net revenue for fines and penalties, or does that include whatever amount that we're paying the vendor of the meters?
That's the net.
That's net. Okay. I assume that if it were as easy as those companies charging more, that we would solve that problem already, but.
No, they are charging more, but that's a separate.
Okay.
Separate conversation. Like everything. I think we can go to what's next. Civilian complaints. This is where I'm happy Lieutenant Amendola is here in the room with us. Please give him grace. He's relatively new in this position, having been promoted into it in January. I think everybody knows we had Lieutenant Richards in this position. He's currently on deployment. Left from September when he was deployed until December. We had Lieutenant Thornton filling in part-time. We're very happy to have Lieutenant Amendola now in the Office of Professional Responsibility. But this is just kind of an overview of the demographics of the employee who had the complaint or complaints filed against them, the demographics of the complainant, the type of complaint, and the finding. Do you think that there was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
John Hilliard, question about this one. I'm curious why like more than half are withdrawn. What is that process? Why do some get withdrawn?
So sometimes what helps now is body cameras. So we can view the body cameras and then we can relay information to them regarding what we saw. And then usually at that point, they feel that they don't want to go along with the complaint because we've kind of seen what happened. So they might not, when the complaint comes in, they might necessarily be telling one thing, but once we confirm, hey, we viewed the body camera, exactly what you said is not really summing up to it. And then that's the reason why, or it could be simple, like an improper procedure. It could be a speeding ticket where we're not allowed to obviously fix that for them. We, go through the process of having them show them how to appeal it through the court system. So that's another reason why you see those withdrawals.
Sure. So just for my clarification. So for example, if they said, I shouldn't have gotten that ticket because the officer didn't see the sign or something, they file it in the wrong way, they file it the civilian complaint, you say, that should basically like appeal in court. That's the sort of thing.
Yeah, so they think that I can't fix it. It's gotta go through the process, through the complaint process through the court. Basically, all I'm looking for is to just make sure there was no rudeness, discourtesy on that part. But if it's strictly for a, a speeding ticket or a stop sign where they feel that, oh, the officer might have missed it or they weren't going that fast, that's something that they have to go through the process through the court and appeal it.
I'll just say, it seems good that they're at least finding the civilian complaint pathway, right? Like, I'd rather have too many people than too few, you actually have, right?
And it's another, body cameras have been great.
Mhm.
Complaints in the past that would have come down to in key sicknesses. We've really been able to resolve a lot of them. Due to accidents. I think the next one is just the rest of
So,
the table.
this
So use of force, we had 34 reported use of force incidents in 2025. That is an increase from 27 the year before. Not every department reports hands-on. So for us, we talk about use of force, any force that's more than compliant handcuff. We categorize it as a use of force, which means a supervisor has to review that incident, make sure the force that was used was proper and appropriate to the situation. So the 39 involved non-compliant handcuffing, just hands-on. 5 involved the display of a firearm, which was then reholstered to effect an arrest or resolve the situation. OC spray, I'm wondering why I guess it's just an option, but it was deployed 0 times. And I'm wondering if that's just a reflect. We had one last year. I'd have to go back and look. OC is pepper spray.
Yeah, I know there have been as
And I think this, if you think back on our Part A crimes report, I mean, we've seen assaultive behavior is up. This isn't always reflective of forces used in other situations, not just to effect an arrest. Sometimes, unfortunately, if people are in a state of mental health, behavioral health crisis, and involuntary transport to the hospital is warranted, it's possible that we'll have to go hands-on when we get somebody on the stretcher to the ambulance to get the help that they need.
Is that what the section 12 means in the data?
Yes,
Okay.
so yeah.
And do we track like the frequency of section 12 use of force over time? Is that going up?
We don't. Which isn't to say that we couldn't go back and, look at that, because it's relatively small numbers. We
Yeah.
probably could go back and see.
Looked like it was 934.
Okay,
yeah. My recollection of the last time that non-lethal for the pepper spray was used was also in section 12 case.
yeah.
There's also a swatting call where a firearm was brandished. It just do you have any more information about that? That's always very sensitive, right? Because presumably the person who this was targeted at was innocent.
The swatting call at we had the swatting incident at the high school.
That was one on Beacon Street, ma'am.
The-
Now turn when it was.
I was at this past calendar year.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, the one that's here is February 3rd.
okay.
Yeah, we did. So our, well, she's actually moved to a position as a domestic violence clinician, but, not to get into the specifics of that case, but, one of our clinicians was in close communication with the person who was, the intended target of that swatting call. That person there was swatting calls at multiple locations that were all tied to a previous address of that person. And don't know if they still reside in Brookline, but they did reside in Brookline during that incident. And so I know following up on that, after that incident, our clinician was working with the person, they were doing very well. I guess I'll leave it at that for the sake of anonymity.
Yeah, I mean, for the sake of this, the disposition is listed as clear that the showing the firearm was viewed as appropriate given the circumstances.
Is that what cleared means in this context? Like it's cleared as in use showing the firearm in swatting?
Oh,
case
sorry.
Appropriate?
It was appropriate, yes.
And do we review each use of force, like body worn camera, all that gets reviewed?
Yes.
You're right, though. I think spirit here was that there was no ultimate arrest from that.
Always in the disposition of the case.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, then
Yeah.
it's either transport to hospital, or clear for rest.
I guess a more targeted question is, were any of these escalate? So you'll have to forgive me for not knowing exactly the exact process here, but when we review that, presumably lowest level is yes, completely appropriate. One level above that presumably would be a note on their file or some conversation with the officer about the use, about whether or not that was appropriate. Did any of these cases rise to that level, or?
No, and typically, if it was found that a use of force was not appropriate, that would also get reported to post. In most cases,
And it would become an open internal affairs investigation.
Okay. So again, this is for me reading this report, learning how to read the report. It would get listed in, is there another section for like, where would that show up in the report?
I guess it wouldn't be separately annotated, other than it would be added into internal affairs. Into the, I forget the slides we were just on, but the complaints. It would be added into the civilian complaints.
or the subject that had force used against them would be complained.
Correct. Yeah, so it wouldn't be separately noted, but it would be an added in here.
Okay. And then, in the worst case, the finding would be sustained or something like that.
Sustained. Yeah, that would be an investigation with Joe's office, reported immediately to post. The findings of that would be reported to post. And depending on the severity of it, it will either be retraining, discipline, up to including termination, or even criminal charges, what is really excessive.
Thanks.
Motor vehicle pursuits, 7 over 5 from the last year. These are the reasons why they occurred. Failed to stop, moped failed to stop, motorcycle. These reflect sort of the conundrum we're in with regard to motorcycles and e-bikes and mopeds, and just trying to figure out what to do. Our pursuit policy says that we shall not pursue unless there's another crime that is committed, and not just with traffic violations. It's just not safe for anybody to pursue a moped or a motorcycle for a red light violation. For example, you have to weigh the danger of pursuing a moped versus the offense that you're pursuing it for.
What we did pursue, the first 2 are mopeds that we pursued.
So we count these, even if like an officer gets on the air and says, I'm behind a moped, it's going this many miles an hour, usually a supervisor will get on the air and say, call it off. But it's still.
I guess. Is there another slide on this, or is this the?
I think that's the one for motor vehicle pursuits. And then we get into notable cases after that. And I didn't bring my glasses. So the first one that's up there.
Would you like me to read it?
No, gosh, I wouldn't do that to you. The first one that's there, involved a couple of officers who were called to a party who was suicidal. I think that case will be highlighted in the next slide, which has a little bit of video attached to it. The second case there, I can talk to that a little bit more when we get to the video. The second bullet point there was a street robbery that happened. A victim was ambushed outside of their home after we learned that they had been followed from Encore Casino, where they won a large amount of money. Suspects followed that person from Encore, stole about $60,000 worth in cash and poker chips. So it was a really complex criminal investigation led by Lieutenant McCarthy, who had to retire in December, when he turned 65. Unfortunately for all of us, except for maybe for him. But it was really great work done by the entire detective division, to bring 2 of them to justice. There's a third suspect who remains under investigation. But I'm optimistic that we'll get there. And a heartbreaking case in the third bullet point, with a young child by a member of their household. We were able to act quickly and apprehend that subject as they were at Logan Airport attempting to get on a flight back to South America. So again, that was excellent detective work. Officers came in, it was reported on the weekend, they came in, worked in the clock to get that guy, just before he left. We can keep going. This is another very high profile case that probably we're all familiar with.
Yes.
That's
There's also
Valera,
our single homicide.
our single homicide. Forgive me if I sound dodgy, I can't remember, based on all my meetings, what's been released publicly and what has not yet with regard to this case, but it received a lot of attention, one because of his the high regard that this professor was held in the MIT and science community, family man, and nobody could think of a motive. He was so well loved, and he was behind a beautiful family, but it was tied to the Brown University active shooter incident that had happened a few days before. Everybody okay? It's just for me. Oh, okay. We can talk about staffing. In FY 25, we lost the funding for 6 positions, also it gets a little, depending on how you want to talk about it. We should still have 134 officers, but we were funded for 128. That makes sense. So that, the percentages can differ based on which number you're using as a base. So we currently have 119 officers. And the good news is that we have 8 anticipated to enter the academy in May. They have now, as of today, passed all of their pre-qualifications. So barring anything really crazy, they should be heading there in May for about 6 months of academy training before they come back to us at the end of November. So using the 134 number, we have 15 vacancies, minus the 8 that are spoken for. We'll have to see what happens with the override that will determine how many of those spots we can fill.
Yeah, I was about to ask, are these numbers assuming no override, or are these numbers assuming the override passes?
I'm assuming that if no override, we'll be at the 128 number. And my understanding is that if the override passes, we'll get those 6 positions back to be 34. And we'll go ahead and move to higher.
And of the 128 number, 119 plus 8 is 127. You have sort of currently people to pay for that.
Yes,
One.
but
Yeah.
but yeah, use a pencil because we have 2 officers that will be retiring before June.
Okay.
One that we know will turn 65 in November. So, as everybody here I think knows, we got out of civil service. We hired an outside vendor. We've been using Get Badged, and they've been great to administer the initial test and help us with recruiting in those initial stages of the hiring process. We're grateful, like the Get Badged contract payment for that comes out of the HR department's budget. They're limited as well. So right now, our contract with Get Badged just ran out. What I'd like to see, if an override passes, if everybody gets funded to the, levels that we need to keep the lights on, it'd be great if we were able to keep that contract open. And so that we could kind of do a 1 out, 1 in type of hiring, rather than having to wait until we're 10 down to the 10th of the academy. That gets expensive. It gets, we get to staffing levels I'm not comfortable with.
Well, it seems like you'll be 9 down. Even assuming everything goes well. What do you have? Well, I guess the override is going to be decided fairly quickly, but are there? I'm assuming that you can't begin, like you said, the contract with Get Badged, you can't begin a hiring process for more than 1 more officer at this point, given the current but
Yeah, I wouldn't feel right about
yeah,
pulling people through the process only to turn around and say, we can't hire them, or, you know, we feel very fortunate that we don't have to lay anybody off.
yeah, that was my suspicion. It looks like at least that's,
Okay. And this is just if anybody is, the wide viewing audience at home is not familiar with what our staffing model looks like, you know, we break the department down into 4 divisions. The patrol, which is the largest, it's the uniform division, people who respond typically to the 911 calls, investigative services, which is detectives, community services, over which, you know, that's where Deputy O'Neill and Rose work out of, and then traffic and community safety. So in order to keep things a little bit right-sized in the patrol division, which is where really a lot of the forcing or forced overtime happens, we've been running a little bit light in community service and investigative services.
yeah, that was gonna be my follow-up question. How is the, independent of the staffing level, how is the force of overtime situation?
It is overall better than it was, you know, than it has been in the past, but it's still occurring, especially in the summer months when people are taking their vacations. We have an issue not with sick time, but by contract, people can use comp time. So when they work an overtime shift, whether it's forced or elected, they have the choice of taking pay or taking time and a half owed down the road, and then we're required to allow them to take that. It was ruled in a JLMC decision back 26 years ago that we can't deny somebody a comp day off just because it costs the department overtime. So it's sort of this, it's a benefit that people enjoy, but then it also has the harmful effects of having officers get forced to cover and actually obligated time off.
And the 2 officers who are retired are not in patrol, presumably.
The 2 officers that will retire, one's in traffic and one is in patrol.
Okay, I guess what the real question I'm asking is does this look to get better if we get the 9 new officers from the academy, minus the 2 who are going to retire? Is that going to ultimately improve our force overtime situation? Or are we going to still be in the hole?
I would anticipate a lot of forcing over the summer because they'll be in the academy. And they will still come out, and for about 3 months, they'll have their obligations. They have to ride with somebody with it, you know, overseen by an FTO. So it'll probably get worse before it gets better again. But what I hope to be able to do is continue to hire lateral transfers, which are a little bit, you know, that plug and play after a short time with the field training officer in Brooklyn. And we've had very good luck. You know, initially when we first got out of civil service, our first round of lateral hires have been fantastic.
And is that the get badged?
So the laterals we got outside of Get Badged, we just put out a call. We got a lot of interest from people from college and university PDs, as well as other departments that were non-civil service. And when we were under civil service, we could only take lateral transfers in from other civil service departments. Once we got out, we were able to take officers from any department, you know, Massachusetts. You have some.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the new officers wouldn't be part of staffing levels until really like the beginning of 2027. Just because of the duration of the academy and then the field training time. So, you know, just the nature of retirements and stuff like that. There's some we can predict, like the chief mentioned, and there's others. There's always the wild cards that, you know,
The best possible case for the department is the override passes, frees up some budget that you could then use to hire lateral transfers in their department who can sort of help right away.
You know, but I wouldn't want them to call for laterals to turn around and lay them off.
Good question. Besides the getting rid of civil service, right? I remember years ago when we were discussing, this is before you were chief, that lateral transfer was not an attractive, Brookline was not an attractive place for lateral transfers. So what has changed?
I have union worked, I think our officers are paid pretty well now. That contract will be up at the end of FY 27, so we'll be going back to the bargaining table. But I think right now, you know, it's safe to say the wages are fair. I think we'll be competitive in terms of what we're paying. and other benefits to include comp time and a detailed rate that's good. Yeah, so.
Well, I think I'd like to mention too that my impression is that the political climate for police officers has improved. It was, I remember right after the Rodney King killing, a lot of activism, concerns about the police were evident in Brookline. And my impression was that morale of the police in Brookline was now because they felt they were much more disrespected than they do now. Was that correct?
I think, yeah, political attitudes towards policing. I mean, there's so many things, national incidents definitely influence them. We think about, I was the only one here in 2001. Take a minute to process that, but yeah, after September 11th, people, thought very, or at least expressed favorable opinions towards police. Same was true in Brookline after the marathon in 2013. And then obviously, to your point, after the murder after the Rodney King incidents, after the murder of George Floyd, it was not a favorable, overall review of policing. And I don't know that I think we're certainly better than we were in 2020. But I think that not everybody has the background that members of this board have. I think I worry a lot about public perception of ICE and being able to distinguish how people view ICE versus how they see local police departments. I think politically and locally, there are some places that I'm definitely keeping an eye on with regard to use of force that will impact whether or not a lot of people want to stay in this profession. So I don't feel safe saying that, politically it's an attractive job, but it certainly is better at sometimes than most of other things. All right, so I think we talked about this. Just some of the issues with shift shortages, being unable to fill the specialist position. A lot of people come along with the desire to someday work in traffic and ride a motorcycle, or work in a school, or work in community service. And those get put on hold when we can't fill patrol. Forcing is obviously bad for morale and for officer safety. But we are, looking at solutions, hoping that, what happens with the budget is something we can work with, that we can move staffing back in the right direction. We hope to engage further with Get Badged, as I mentioned. It'd be nice to have something more ongoing, rather than have the budget say we can only have it for certain months of the year. When we did our strategic plan a couple of years ago, one of the things that was mentioned was a cadet program, like they have in Boston, specifically in other cities and towns.
Do you have a good long range picture of retirements? I mean, because of course retirement at 65, you sort of know, absent everything else, how many officers you're going to have to hire every year just to keep up with retirement.
We don't have a lot of people staying until 65 anymore.
Okay. So I mean, I guess that's good.
So it's, which it was nice when that was the case because it was a lot more predictable. The downside of that is you were kind of waiting for some people to turn 65 so you could.
I guess what is is there an expected, just trying to go further on the ongoing contract with Get Badged with these things, having a target for expecting that we're going to hire 5 new officers a year just to sort of keep up with attrition of whatever the number is.
Yeah, I think we can have a rough estimate, and 5 might actually be kind of in the ballpark of what we'd like to see, but it's hard to know because people aren't leaving for the reasons that they used to leave. The great news about, the great thing about laterals is that they come in already trained. But when we were, the other side of the coin is when we were under civil service, we were, at least when civil service was working for us, we had people, people who had ties to Brookline, and I grew up a block away, right? Like I only wanted to work in Brookline, people were loyal to the town. And we don't have that anymore. We have people who want to be police officers and they're not tied to the town or community unless we, make the working conditions.
We still have the option to have hiring preferences for folks who are local.
Yeah. Out of the 8 going to the academy though, only 1 is a Brooklyn resident. And I think he's going to be great. But I wish we could have I wish would have had more applicants. Definite out. But actually, a cadet program is what, something that we have in mind to try to address that, and I think I've lost all track on I shuffled the slides where things ended up, but we are also working, maybe it's on the next one. There's a high school program funded by the VHS Innovation Fund that Marcy Miller is doing with the River. And we have a couple of high school students now interning. They're supposed to be logged on. I don't know if they're on here or not for their hours. They're supposed to be watching them and asking questions tomorrow to make sure they're here. But we're trying to find with the SROs out of the school different ways to engage with our youth, including that internship program and also the legal studies class that Officer Camille is teaching in high school. So Sarah, maybe on the next.
It's after.
I guess
towards the
I
end.
don't know. You know what? Let's just see what comes up next. All right.
I have one question. I may be linking two things together that aren't linked, but I had a question on staffing and also calls for service.
Mhm.
There was like a very large drop for calls for service on page 24, but it didn't seem like party crimes and arrests dropped similarly.
Yeah.
Is that a staffing thing or just?
No, I just, we had that many fewer calls this year and I'd like to see how that pans out over time. I wonder if it's like some of that is to do with the behavioral health helpline, things they're going on stabilizing some of those initiatives.
Right.
I'd like to think people are resolving conflicts. Everyone's laughing, so maybe not, but I don't know, but it's something that,
And all calls from service are originated by like, not the police department, like people calling a number.
yeah, like we, in our CAD, we track, when somebody calls off on a traffic post, because somebody calls off on a parking lot, but we don't include those in calls.
It includes officer initiated calls as well.
Yeah, but not like. It wouldn't like a station assignment or something that,
Typically those are taken out. Anything that's not like a call for service, that would be quality of life, reporting a crime. If it's like a training call, learn more, restocking the ambulance, those are typically taken out.
So, I mean, it might be, since it's such a big drop, I think it would be helpful to see like if it's what segment of call initiations to, make up that drop. Is it, I assume that officer initiated, if it was, then it might be a data point on like staffing or something else that makes the override more pressing or something like that.
yeah.
And because we have unified dispatch, I think it's usual for if someone calls and says, somebody's having a heart attack, we'll send police as first responders along with everyone else. So it would be, like we're just guessing as to what the cause is, right? Maybe no one's having heart attacks at Brookline. Everyone's being very healthy this year, right? But like that would also drive our numbers down.
So that video I promised you every slide for the last 8 slides. We were here. If there's volume, I think it would be impactful.
Do we have sounds there?
It might not be yet, or there's music, but there's supposed to be sound.
It is up. I can hear it, but I can't do anything about projection.
Sorry, okay, we'll hum along.
Well, yeah.
I mean, this is all the way up. My computer is all the way up. I don't know. 1 second. Is it better now?
Control. We have a rifle here. I don't know what type of rifle it is, but it could be a BB gun.
Oh. Hey. Can you come talk to us real quick? Talk to us? No, please. Ma'am, don't do it. Come here. Please. Just come talk to us. Come talk to us. Get over here. Cover the up. Hey, wait, you're gone. We got you. It's okay.
I guess under high profile incidents, we didn't put in the list, the incident that was at, Temple Zion, but that was in Hall. You remember, on Yom Kippur, there's a man outside the temple with a rifle. And it turned out to be a BB gun, and his story, which we found credible, was that he was shooting the rats.
No end of targets.
That's his timing and his location.
Chief, excuse me, I noticed when the officers went into the home of the potentially suicidal person, did they have, bulletproof vests on? I didn't see vests on them.
I think they did. A lot of our vests were shifting towards like the outer carrier model, and Russ looked like he was going to jump in and answer that. But yeah, so everybody hired after 2001, I believe. Nope. Okay, maybe 2003 is required to wear their vest.
Yes, correct. And they would have been, they were wearing the vest similar to, if you're looking at the picture there of Officer De Silva standing with Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus. That would be the same model vest that those three officers were wearing.
Gotta be careful around Santa Claus.
No, but yeah, so, and just to clarify, he was yelling at his partner to get the F over here, not at the poor woman who was trying to end her life.
And that was body cam footage.
Yeah, and so you would have seen on there was a check on the well-being, so if you were to go back and watch it, you would see EMS and fire also on scene, but we're the primary point of contact for those types of calls.
I also saw a shot of firearm training, I think there. And I remember in the past, talking maybe with Superintendent Campbell about difficulty scheduling the range. We have to do that with the city of Boston. Any updates on that? Has that gotten any better or worse?
We're working on it. So this is what happens, right? When laws or rules are made without consultation, Post was deliberate that they didn't want police chiefs as part of the commission. So without that, they lost the free consults that they would have had. So for us, for example, a large department, we rely on Boston PD to be able to use their range to do our annual firearms training. The requirement had been that we go once a year. So we would go typically in the summer to do the 8-hour day, and then we would go typically in November. If you've ever been out to Moon Island in the middle of Boston Harbor, I hate the cold, and the fact that I didn't die out there is just a miracle. It's really cold. So November's when we can go and it's dark, and I don't actually die from hypothermia. But the MUTC changed the rules, so you have to go to the range. I believe it has to be at least 4 months apart, but not more than 6 months apart, which is great if you're a police department and you have your own range, but that's not a lot of police departments. And so we're relying on Boston's range. In addition to being inconvenient and almost impossible to schedule because they have to train their entire department, they also understandably started charging us because they required they have at least a sergeant present at the range every time that we're there. So if we need 12 sessions, we're paying 12 overtime shifts for a Boston PD supervisor, so which is having an impact on our budget as well. So the deputy is now kind of looking at different options, and then the FTC just opened a new facility in Marlboro with a range. However, every municipal police department is going to try to get in there, and it's Marlboro, which is really not convenient at all. We're looking at, Newton PD has a range, but it's really only 2 officers and 3 officers at a time can use it. So we're going to try to get creative and find ways to cover these training needs that are mandated without raising our staffing levels and our budget. So I'm confident that he's going to find their solution.
Fingers crossed.
And next slide. So some of the highlights, just some of the other stuff that we've had going on in addition to crime. We're still doing our car seat installations. We're still doing the house compulsion threat assessments. Some of those, like the Are You Prepared presentations that we're doing, a lot of the housing worships in Temple specifically are funded using UASI funds. We have an officer, Officer Healy, who's a few years ago offered herself out as an LGBTQ+ liaison. So she is a CIT officer who identifies as a member of that community and has agreed to just, be the point person for anyone who finds himself in need of behavioral mental health support and identifies as a member of that community and doesn't really benefit from that. Specific of the background of the officer. We're trying to increase engagement with our youth through a junior cert program. Again, that is funded through UAPTE. The legal studies elective that's going on at the high school with Marcy Miller's class, taught by Officer Keneally. The internship I mentioned, I got that over here, and the summer youth program, which is our 1 week summer camp for kids early in 7th and 8th grade. I think there's another slide with more. Yeah, we've had a few community events were highlighted in that video, including our Thanksgiving dinner, which sold out again. Well, it's free. It's sold out, but our National Night Out celebration is always the first Tuesday in August, and thank you. I think you were there for that. First Light we participated in, and Brookline Day, of course. We're trying to encourage officers to get out more on park and walks where they're out interacting with members of the community, much easier for the day shift and first half officers than for the last half folks. But Sergeant Rob on social media, hopefully everybody is following him and what he's doing. But it sounds like you are included. We talked about earlier about the ID audit type of material that goes out. And he's trying to do different things, and the whole division is trying to do different things with incident updates, alerts, and did you know kind of campaign. We're trying to solicit ideas from the high school students and anybody else that wants to tell us what they want to hear from us on social media. I've used all my words.
I'll just say marathon is coming up as well.
It's coming up.
Big
Yes.
day.
The 20th. So we're ready. We have help once again from Norfolk County Sheriffs, Cambridge PD, Suffolk County Sheriffs, our National Guard. It's an all hands on deck.
I just had a question, because you covered some of the notable incidents from last year. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but the incident with Sarah Hubauer, I'm just wondering if there's any update on the review of what happened in the process, or any changes in policies related to that.
So we state police concluded their report. Those reports and our internal affairs report was done as well as in the board. We wrapped that up and was determined there was no wrongdoing on the part of any officer who member of our department. It's possible that we'll see civil litigation, so that's always
okay.
I think everybody who has spoken to attorney says you can sue somebody. Right? We have reviewed department wide, with all of our officers, the requirements to check on prisoners. On the notifications, we've looked in, to kind of see if there's anything that we could be doing with our policies. There's nothing that we found that would have prevented that, but really refresher training on, the book of the area. The checks were done when they were supposed to be done. Medical care was provided as soon as they noticed that she was unresponsive. And it's just a tragedy, and we'll continue to think about her.
Any other questions?
I did want to thank Rose, because I know in the past I've asked for the racial breakdown data to be done in a different way. You could so thank you. I mean, I'm still, our percentages still don't match our demographics, but at least we can sort of more clearly see how that is. And I think it's more clear that our non-resident arrests match the demographics of the surrounding area. But for Brookline residents, it's somewhat perhaps. But thank you for doing it.
We're very lucky to have Rose.
Just want to say thank you. Thank you, Chief, for signing on for another 3 years. That's our Chief.
Thanks for having me. It's a good department.
Any other questions before we open up to public? No. Sarah, if there's any members of the public that wish to say something or ask the chief a question, they may.
I'm gonna stop sharing just so I can see who's in the room because I'm
Okay.
not really capable of doing both. All right. I'm looking. I'm I'm letting everyone know that we are now open for public comment. If you wish to make a public comment, please use the raise hand function or otherwise indicate so in some way that you wish to speak. Feel free to email me. If all else fails, I will put my email in the chat. There you go. It should go to everyone. I don't see any movement.
Okay.
I'll just, again, because this is what the, what I remember commenters in the past going. If there is any way to break out the bicycle related incidents, so two of the memorable commenters, public commenters from past, one was very concerned that it seemed like we weren't doing enough on parking violations and moving violations in general. I think those numbers are up this year, which is good. But the one who asked for sort of evidence that we were taking bicycle related violations seriously. If there is any way that we can sort of show our progress year to year on those sorts of that subcategory of moving violations, that would probably be helpful. Just mostly asking on sort of behalf of the transportation board, who has the people who are really interested in that. But
Yeah, and I think it came up similarly, like similar question. Bicyclists frustrated with blocked bicycle lanes. And I think I probably emailed you, Rose, and the data was actually helpful to see like how many tickets are issued for blocking bike lanes. I think it shows that we're supporting the safety of our cyclists. So I found it insightful to see that when I asked at the time.
Okay. Thank you, Chief, for your report.
Thank you.
Next item is that we took up at the last meeting was Blue Voice. And Michael Groveman, can you tell us your name and where you're from and all?
Sure. I'm Michael Groveman. I'm from Brookline, Mass. I worked for the Brookline Police Department for 32 years.
Yeah.
Currently live in Newton. And after an arson-involved shooting 3 years ago in Cambridge, two gentlemen at Harvard Law and Harvard Business School came to me through a Brookline tech investor and asked if I could help them create something to help police officers. And that's where Blue Voice was born.
Hey, could you just generally describe what the Brookline Police Department is looking at from Blue Voice?
Yeah, so perfect. One of the things I'm very interested in is having the chief expected to work.
Right, just the product itself.
Yeah.
You want me to describe what the product is?
That's all.
Sure. Yes, it's a
last time.
It's a platform that officers can access from their phones, MDTs, laptops, that gives them immediate information to policy, law, mental health first aid, or MPTC first aid, or anything else, the ordinances that the chief and her command staff want on the application. So it's built custom built for each department. There's 100 in Massachusetts that use it. And it gives them immediate access to anything they need, including community resources or whatever else they want.
So I know, I apologize in the last meeting, if there was a miscommunication. The Blue Voice representatives were here and I was not here. They actually still got regretting that happened. So I hope that you will forgive me. So what this came to this committee after we were looking to use UASC funds to pay for the Blue Voice app. as a regional, as a regional ask. Blue Voice for us, because it had an AI label on it, raised a lot of flags and people were very concerned. Our use for Blue Voice, is, not, what we'll be using it for is not everything it can do. What we're interested in, it's basically an enhanced find function. We're using the non-generative, AI. We will handpick the documents that get uploaded into Blue Voice. It will include Mass General laws, the textbooks that we reference and that we give to our officers who are seeking promotion, the town bylaws, our policies and procedures. If you think about it, if you want to visualize it, our officers are responsible for probably 6,000 pages of material that they have to, I don't pretend they commit it to memory, I certainly don't. But imagine them lugging around an entire encyclopedia on the back, so that they can reference it if they need to. Nobody's doing it in the industry. We shouldn't be asking our cops to do it either. I think, it's really just an app on a phone or on a department laptop or iPad. And just like Siri, you can say, hey, Blue, oh gosh, now my iPad's good. But you just say, what's the chapter and section for a red light violation? And it pulls it up, not from the internet or, Minnesota state law, but from the documents that we've uploaded in. So it's safe. And the other nice feature that I really liked about it is that, we don't know who asks what. That data is anonymous. We don't know what officer is asking what question. And I hope the officers appreciate, I'm not interested in, looking at what officers know and don't know. That's not what it's for. But it can come back to us and give us, general categories of what questions the officers are asking. And that helps us identify training gaps or things that we might need to do refreshers on. If people are, if 100 people ask, what are the elements of a negligent operation charge, that's clearly something that we need to address in training. So it helps us on the backside too. Down the road, we could possibly implement like the floor plans for the high school, then an officer could pull up for responding to a swatting call and say, we have a medical room 237. As we mentioned earlier, not all of the officers that were hiring now are from Brookline. I actually went to Brookline High and it's an entirely different building than it was just a few years ago when I was there. I don't know why you're laughing, Joe, but we'll talk about it. And it's really just uploading materials that are appropriate places for the officers to ask the questions. So the select board, before approving the use of the UASC funds, wanted this board to hear it. Wanted to see what it was that we were asking for. So we'll move back to them and say, hopefully has approval.
Any questions, comments of the chief or like the Brookman Blue Voice?
Hi, I have a quick question of the chief. I'm not of the AI world, as you can imagine, but can you give me a real hardcore example? Are you driving down the street, you see a crime being committed, you're not sure what law, do you punch this in? Do you arrest somebody and say, oh my goodness, I need to look at X, Y, and Z? I mean, how is this used kind of in real time to expedite and give, I want to say better care, but better care?
Yeah, I think, an example that we have mentioned a few times tonight, like what's the difference between an e-bike and a moped, or, a moped and a scooter? And it can pull up John Sheff's reference guide, that an e-bike can only go 20 miles an hour and a scooter goes faster than that. It's great for, some of our partners that we work at, either through Sheff or through Hanrahan, will issue training bulletins, as case law comes out. And so we're able to upload those so we have, we don't have to wait for next year's law book to come out. We can keep, the case law relevant. So even like what are the elements for B&E nighttime versus day, versus daytime, so that the officers know the right thing to charge, when they sit down to write their report. How many times, how many times does somebody have to make a phone call in order for it to fall under harassing phone calls?
Okay, so this is kind of like after the fact to shore up the paperwork, make it more expeditious, make it more clear. I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean, I do think, I'm trying to think of like, I hope nobody's driving, you know, high speed to a call and using their voice to text, that would be problems, but yeah, or, you know, even a lieutenant back at the station, you know, can be listening to what's happening over the air. You know, and take direction from the app if it's something that, a law that they don't use all the time.
Chief, you did mention the use of adding all your crime bulletins to it so that officers would know about breaking crime. And since you control it, you can use it for that too. Cambridge does a really good job of using it that way. They have updates 3 times a week. And I know you did mention that that might be something you wanted to explore.
We could look at that down the road if we have, it would require having personnel in order to purge stuff as it's no longer relevant. But it's great to know that that's, you know, a capability that it has. Or, you know,
would this AI in any way, shape, or form tie into ICE?
no. No, in fact, you know, it would be on there to say, you could look up, you know, what's General Order 43, which is our Brookline PD policy that tells us what we can and cannot do with regards to civil immigration enforcement. So that if somebody has a question, you know, it would be answered right for them out of our own policy, as opposed to, you know, Googling, you know, can I enforce civil immigration detainer and getting an answer from the state that does not align with our state laws and our department philosophies.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? No, I had a question. It's just, I'm glad to hear about the, I'll say the parameters around how we're coming to use it, but, if for some reason, like say down the line, I'll even say a couple of years later or a few years later, there was the potential to use it for something more extensive than we're planning to use it for now. Would there be some way of notifying the select board or the PCAC that there's we're considering a change and expanding how we're planning to use this? In other words, how do we know that the standards will stay consistent, you know, going down the line?
That's a fair question. I think the terms of use are outlined in the contract that we'll sign with Blue Voice, and a change in the contract, I would imagine, would have to come back here or in front of the board before we sign.
Okay. Okay, that's good.
I think when we had discussed this last week, I also recommended that we do a year, after the first year review retrospective, because I think a lot of those questions, probably even Christine's questions, will be a lot more clear after we've got some experience with it. You can look back and say, what did officers actually use this for? They used it a lot, maybe they didn't. Also, the price goes up after a year.
No, Mike said no. Not his life.
But I also agree that like keeping an eye on the terms and whether the capabilities are still the same as they were, or whether there's new features, discussing whether we wanted to opt in.
And I think that's smart with anything technology related, with the body worn cameras as an example. You know, we don't know until we're kind of in it and working with it.
Yeah.
What some of the kinks and pain points will be. So I think that's what's.
The body worn cameras have this, like we pay a significant amount of money to maintain that footage as well.
Mhm.
And I think it's always worth keeping an eye on, because once you sign into that system, you're kind of on the hook. Not accusing Blue Voice of doing the same thing, but you know, like you do want to keep an eye on whether your current usage is compatible with the current price. I will say, I just checked with John. Both of us had requested the data management policy, which also would answer your question, Christine, about whether the data stays with Blue Voice or who else can have access to it. I was sent an NDA. I did not have a chance to sign it or return it. Yeah, so we will do that and do our due diligence on that. But that is something that I think we share your interest in, Christine, and we will do our best to.
If there was some concern, okay, Susan's.
Mhm.
Yep. There.
Oh,
Yay!
Susan read.
There she is.
Hi, thank you. Just wanted to flag, I know there had been an NDA shared, it sounds like to a couple of members. I did want to flag that, if this is a document being provided to PCAC members to review, in the context of this discussion and possible vote, that is very, very likely any, policies you're provided could be subject to a public records request. It's not to say they would automatically be released or released in their entirety. There may be exemptions that would apply, but generally documents either made or received by committee members are going to be public records that we would have to review. So just want to make sure folks are aware of that.
Seems like I should send this by you tomorrow. And we'll figure out what we can and can't do there.
That sounds fine.
There is something about compelled disclosure in here, but you'd be a better expert to review this.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
I will say we did get a verbal commitment from Blue Voice that their data is kept separate and not subject to this.
Well, I would think my 32 years working for Brookline PD and growing up there for 50 something years of my life, and us developing this with two people that most of the folks in the Brookline PD knows is good enough. I will tell you that we will not release any of that stuff because under our SOC 2 compliance, you have to sign an NDA to have it. And we are not changing our behaviors or risking anything because this is very high compliance. I will just tell you that, but I can speak to the chief and to Deputy Superintendent O'Neill of working with them for many years. So this is not a hard decision, quite honestly, because most of the Uracity departments have this. This has taken a very long time in Brookline. It's understandable, but this is going to keep people safe. And I will tell you, as the person who was in charge during the Boston Marathon bombings, that you want everyone on the same page if something bad happens in 3 weeks. 3 weeks from today is the marathon. I can tell you there's a bunch of other departments on the route that have it too. So I would hope that we could move this along so the officers can have access to this, the entire department, because as someone who was in charge that day, it was a very hectic day and we would have liked to have a lot more collaboration, coordination, both in Brookline and outside of it.
So I had forgotten, is this a year to year or it's a term of years?
I believe we're looking to sign a year to year,
Yep, correct, year to year.
And
but we've locked in for 10 years at the price that they.
so, so,
You keep laughing.
so it's year to year, so it'll be self-renewal or do you sign a new contract?
I think we have to sign each year.
Correct. Yep. We would not, quite honestly, when we started this, Jen was one of the first people I went to, and we did a lot of work on this. The CTO was one of the most foremost experts on AI development in the world at the time. He was one of the heads of Google Brain, and it was built from the ground up because we worked with police departments in Brookline, Norwood, Carlisle, and Cambridge to get the information that the officers needed to make the best decisions. And only then, after we worked with them for 6 to 8 months, did we even think about going and creating something. And it went from a small little thing to now we're in 17 separate states.
Sarah, could you see if anybody in the public wants to have any comment or question?
Can I make, if my interns are on, can I make them ask the question? And
Sorry, David Butcher, if you are, I saw your hand up for a second and then it went back down. If you wish to speak, please, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and you can go ahead and your 3 minutes will begin.
You guys hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
That's why I was going back and forth. I didn't know if my mic was going to work. I've commented on this before. I think this is generally good. I think Scott brought up both of the things that I care the most about. I think one other thing that I would mention is I don't think I'd want to see on a report or on a complaint that the reasoning for one of our officers making a mistake in a call and say why they made the arrest or something was because Blue Voice said that. I think it needs to be clear that it's still the officer's responsibility to make the call, and this is just a tool to assist them. I just don't think anyone in the community is going to be happy when the excuse for something that went wrong was because the AI assistant told them to do so. So I think
Yeah, I think you cut out, but I think it's a good point to make, and I feel good knowing that, it'd be similar to them blaming a textbook or a law book for them making a mistake. The only things that they're drawing from, they either made a mistake in interpreting, what the text is that shows up on the app.
So the Zoom said that was David speaking. Could we just have David say his name and on the record? Just being transferred.
yeah, name's David Butcher, resident of Brookline.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, President of Brooklyn.
We missed the last part of it.
Nope, it's good.
I have just the one other thing. I was interested in what Michael was saying there at the end there about.
You're cutting out again.
David, I'm not sure why you're cutting out. You are not muted, so I don't know what's going on. If you wish to write down your question or comment and send it to me via email, my email address is S as in Sam, KAP as in Paul, LAN as in Nancy, at brooklinema.gov. Feel free to email me and I can read your comment into the record so it's clear.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else in the public that wants to comment?
I do not see any other hands raised. If you wish to raise your hand, it would be under the react function if you're on Zoom. Or you can email me at that email address. It is currently open. I am eagerly waiting responses.
Sarah, I'm always available to answer any questions directly at michael@bluevoice.io. I know David has tried to ask some questions, and I'd be more than glad to answer them in writing for him.
Okay, if I get an email from him, sorry, I will unmute you again, David. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, my mic was running out of batteries.
Okay.
Don't rely on wireless things. Mike, I was interested in what you were saying there about how Blue Voice might have assisted you in something like the Boston bombing situation. I'm just interested if you could describe that, because I truly am interested. I'm just wondering, because I think, you said it would create cross communication between the different communities, but I also think that we also said that Blue Voice would only have Brookline stuff in it. So I'm just interested in what you meant there about how it would help in a situation like that.
Sure. So for the Boston Marathon, MEMA puts out an incident action plan that's about 1,200 pages long, and it has the IAP, the incident action plan, or the ops plan for every single agency along the route. It also has a very complex communications chain, because these radios that we use are all on different frequencies. So as you all remember, when the bombs went off, everyone went to their phones, the system shut down. We had no cell phones that we could use, and we have to defer to line phones or sat phones. The line phones not everybody had, meaning we had to go to an actual phone in the emergency management vehicle and make these dials. Now, when we call phones from your cell phone, you just touch someone's name and you start talking to them. I spoke with Dan Linsky, who was in charge in Boston, and I spoke with Jay Babcock, who was one of the people in charge in Newton. I had to use a sat phone on that. I've never used a sat phone, so I had to go and pull up out of my pocket this paper incident action plan that I actually wrote, go through it, pull it up, and then I made numerous errors and calls because it's a very long number that I'm not used to. Another thing that came up is when I told the officers that there was a bombing and I told them to push them back to the secondary location. And one officer who's retired now said, "Where is the secondary location?" And my response was, "It's right in your booklet." And his next response was, "Does anyone have any of those booklets?" So that's the sort of stuff that's really important. If something happens, it won't happen just in Boston or in Brookline or Newton or wherever it is. We, as you remember, what happened was we went into Boston to help shut down the race. They asked us to help them. We then got everyone out by bus coming the wrong way up Beacon Street with about 30 motorcycles going about 50 miles an hour, making sure that everyone got out of there safely. And we could not let them take their bags because we didn't know if there were any bombs in it. It was only through the communications through myself, Dan, and Jay that we were able to figure out the best place to take them was BC inside. We were going to put them out at BC outside, but we hadn't scoped out the thing and done a bomb sniff. So all that information, those secondary locations, the places to change and the places to get the buses to get people out of there, and a bunch of other things are in those plans. And without that communication to know that Boston has a Red Cross station, an advanced Red Cross station right over the line, we wouldn't have known that. Those are the things that are important that we all need to share, and everyone has access to them on race day. All of the police officers in all the different cities and towns, but no one ever reads them because they're so extensive. That's what I was talking about with information sharing coordination during the marathon.
So thumbs up, right? Yes. Great. We had talked about doing a vote on Blue Voice. Is that something?
That would be very helpful.
Okay.
So do we have any suggested wording? Yeah, that's
I wrote something earlier.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, PCAC supports adoption of Blue Voice on the condition that the generative AI features remain disabled and the PCA receives an effectiveness report prior to removal.
And you just sort of add in 1 year.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's great.
Yeah. Through making new features or the only other thing was the data retention policy, which I think is probably outside the scope of that recommendation.
Okay.
I mean, I'd love to have town council sort of come through that with a fine tooth comb. I'm pretty sure that's being done already.
I hope so.
But yeah.
I'm fine to move this, but from my point of view.
Why don't you read it very slowly?
Oh, sure.
All right, and then when it's reported accurately.
Yeah, sure. The PCAC supports adoption of the Blue Voice product on the condition that the generative AI features remain disabled and the PCAC receives an effectiveness report prior to the renewal in 1 year.
Okay, so
I would need to add to be purchased by the Brookline Police Department, or
It's not, I mean, it's a grant, yeah, it gets
okay.
it's fuzzy about where the actual money's coming from.
Okay,
Yes.
Strike.
Your chance is good.
Only friendly suggestion, not an amendment.
Okay, so I move that we adopt the amendment as written, adopt the motion as written.
Second, right? He made a motion.
Oh, second, okay.
Okay, that's Ron.
Ron Wilkinson seconds.
Okay, John Hillen made the motion.
Do you want to write it down before we?
Yeah, I've written that down.
Okay.
So.
Also, he's the secretary.
Yeah.
Any questions or discussion on the motion that we have on the floor?
I'll just briefly repeat what I said last meeting, which is, it seems like Blue Voice is doing everything right. We're pretty pleased with the answers we got, even though they're Harvard folks.
I'm not a Harvard person, believe me.
Yeah. And the idea of retrieval augmented search, more or less. I didn't realize there's 1,200 pages of marathon stuff. Certainly the stuff that we on the PCAC have been responsible for policy wise. you know, being able to have officers find the right place in our policy more quickly and accurately, I think it's to everyone's benefit. There are dangers, you know, and it's mostly around the generative features. I've certainly asked, I use it from time to time to find stuff buried in documentation, and I've had it lie to me about where that is, right? So the idea that instead of doing some general conversation, it just points me to where it thinks it is, and it's either there or not, seems like the best practice right now for that sort of technology. And so I plan on supporting this motion made by John.
Okay, so we're gonna do it.
Anybody else to comment? Why don't we go to the Zoom first? Christine, how do you vote?
I vote aye, I support it.
Thank you. John Hillett,
John Hilliard, aye.
Scott Laney,
Scott Nanian, aye.
Ron Wilkinson, aye.
and Paul Yee, aye. Okay,
Thank you.
unanimous. Very good.
Thank you. And folks, you do retain all of that information. That's all yours. We don't share it with anybody, as is the chief knows.
Thank you for your patience tonight. I
It
know,
was a pleasure and it was wonderful to see. And it's melancholy because I'm in my 60s now and I watch them both come on as very young people, and now they're in charge. And,
We're all very young here.
well, and it's just wonderful to see that how well the leadership in the department has worked with the town, and I'm just very proud of them and happy for the town.
thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Good night,
Thank you.
Michael.
Bye.
Thanks, bye, Michael.
Good night.
Good night. All right, so we've got the vote. Let's see. Oh, investigation of civilian complaint report. Lieutenant Amendola.
Lieutenant Amendola from Office of Professional Responsibility. I was asked to come in tonight and talk about the first complaint of the year. It was an online complaint that came through the PCAC on February 3rd. Immediately upon receiving that complaint, I started my investigation. The way I do my investigation is obviously I take the complaint, I read it, and my biggest thing is I'm looking at, did the officers that initiated this complaint, did they violate any of our policies? And so I break it down, I come up with my conclusion, and then I go back and I read it to say, okay, this is what I got the first time I went through it. The second time, did I miss something? I'm going back and double checking. In the first paragraph, it explains the individual's morning routine, where he comes out and moves his car and back and forward, and it's preventing other people from parking. I look at that and I don't see any violations by any of the officers. I didn't determine that the direct complaint was directed at the officers. And then I go down to the middle and it explains where they talk about that they're aware of the situation that they've occurred and they've seen this kind of on a weekly basis for the last couple of years. So now I got to make a determination. Again, this is coming from anonymous complaint, so I don't have access to reach out to the individual that is making the complaint. And when it comes to anonymous complaints, you got to be very careful. You got to kind of look into it just a little bit more. And I had several questions that I would have liked to ask this individual pertaining to, stating when they were there. There was an officer that used to work with us that is recently retired. That was friendly with this the driver that they're talking about, and used to go on their shift and talk to this person. So my question is, do we know who that person that they were actually seeing? Was it what these two sergeants were, or was it possibly someone else? So I don't have that information because again, it's anonymous. I'm not able to speak to that person. And then kind of at the end of the complaint, they talk about we're asking that these officers no longer sanction this activity, right? And that the Brookline Police put an end to it. So when I look at that, I'm interpreting that as they're coming, asking me to reach out to the officers to say, could you please speak to that individual and have them stop, right? I'm not seeing any direct conflict or any violations that the complaint is directed towards them. And my job is when I look at these, my major job is I'm focused on determining do these officers, have they violated any laws? And when I look at this complaint, I don't see that this complaint is directed at these two officers. It's directed at the driver, which is not a police officer in this town. So when I came up with my conclusions, I issued guys the letter, and I came up with, based on this, there's just insufficient evidence to conclude that an actual complaint was directed at either officers. And again, I reviewed this multiple times, and I just don't see a connection between the complaint towards the officers. It's strictly, the way I interpret it is strictly towards the driver, which is not an officer. And when I take these complaints, I'm investigating to see if there's any connection between the officers, which in this case, I did not see. And that's how I, came up with my conclusion. And that's why, there was just insufficient to conclude that either of them were involved in the incident. That's why the case was classified as harmless.
Any questions or comments?
Kind of in a formal way, I definitely can see where you're coming from. But when I read some of the original, first of all, Mr. Ron Wilkinson, co-chair of the PCAC. So when the original complaint came in, it came in through the PCAC complaint form. And so I saw the full text of it. The reason why I had some questions is it's you might say it's reading between the lines, but what I would like to do, Sarah, is it possible for you to put up the redacted text that I kept filed?
I don't have the packet pulled up right now. Give me a minute.
Okay,
I've got it in front of me.
you've got it in front of
Me
you?
too. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I just want to, I can read the text. So, and it's heavily redacted, but it's from the original complaint. And the anonymous person who filed the complaint is talking about the particular individual and says that this individual's morning routine that we have witnessed for the past few years is a serious concern. Every school day, not just once a week, every school day, he pulls his car into the road from approximately 7:40 to 8:10 a.m. and parks in front of his house and leaves the vehicle running. When vehicles attempt to park in front of his house, he will drive his car forwards or backwards to actively block vehicles from parking. We have witnessed multiple near misses where the other driver doesn't know that this person is moving his car toward them while they are attempting to park. Our concern is that there are children in the cars and someone will be injured. There were also children exiting vehicles in order to walk over to the school. So this creates a dangerous situation, not just for the driver trying to park, but other vehicles nearby. The recent snow, this was in winter, the recent snow is only making the situation worse. The reason for this complaint is that two sergeants we mentioned have watched this occur on a weekly basis for the past few years. Sometimes they will park their Brookline PD vehicle in the street or driveway. Other times they pull up to his driver's side window and talk. We had hoped that these sergeants would dissuade him from his behavior, but that does not seem to be the case as this has gone on for years. We are asking that these sergeants no longer sanction this activity and that the Brookline Police Department puts an end to this before someone is hurt. The secondary concern is that the person is idling his vehicle for at least 30 minutes every weekday. Given the town of Brookline's commitment to climate action and resiliency planning, including an actionable roadmap to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we ask that the Brookline Police Department enforce the Massachusetts anti-idling law. Harassing other drivers and preventing vehicles from legally parking does not seem to be a valid exception to the law. So that's that's how the anonymous complaint was submitted. And, you know, from a very, I'll call it a technical point of view, you know, I could definitely see where you're coming from, but it seems like there's I don't know, a larger issue going on. And that's what I'm concerned about. At the very least, I'm the sort of person who wonders why he's doing this. First of all, verifying whether or not the behavior occurs. The person who filed the complaint says this is happening essentially every school day and has been going on for a long time. So that means, to me, that meant that it could easily be investigated. Except have somebody go out there and see whether he's doing it or not. You know, it's not like it's just hearsay. There's no way to verify it. So that was number one. And number two, if you could have a look at if the individual is doing this behavior and has been doing it for years, something interesting is going on. I mean, it's just like, you know, why does he feel he has to keep the space so clear in front of his house near the school? I mean, at the very least, something is going on. And I would just be curious to even know what's going on that's inducing this particular behavior. And although it's, you know, it's the two sergeants in question that we've been reacting at, we know they have a relationship. It's a familiar relationship with the person who is a subject of the complaint. So there's an interesting kind of a factor going on there. But it just seemed to me that it was a distinctive enough situation, alleged to have been persistent over time, that it was worth an investigation just to find out what the heck is going on there. It was such a striking kind of an example. So that was my take on it.
Yeah. And those are great points. And like I said, I looked into those, but as an investigator, when I receive a complaint, I'm looking in to see if the officers violated the policy. The running of the car, the potential, that's something different that I can look into later, but I have to look in at this time, like, is this complaint directed at the officers? You know, when I conducted my investigation, I brought both officers up separately. I asked them, I had questions regarding this. Both of them knew nothing about it, that they said. One of them no longer is on that day shift. They've gone to another shift. So I understand, like, you know, it clearly states this is occurring on this certain date, but I was assigned to investigate, did the officers break any policies?
Okay, basically,
and by that, you know, I didn't see anything that because I wasn't able to speak to any witnesses and so forth. So I don't, you know, I came to a termination. I didn't believe that they broke any violations. Now the moving and the stuff like that's kind of different. So like I said, I was assigned to look for violations, and I determined that there was.
Yeah, just keeping in mind, like, the lieutenant's scope as the Office of Professional Responsibility. The operator of the car is in that purview. That's separate behavior. And like, if we got a call for service, somebody calls us and says this behavior is going on right now, of course, we'd send an officer up there or a supervisor if we needed to figure out why he was doing that, or we're getting information a couple of weeks later. We don't, you know, with any witness in any kind of complaint, we want to know, like, kind of the veracity, like, how does he know what he knows? And I'd say it doesn't have to be he, but the complainant here, like, how do they know, you know, that it's the two sergeants? How do they know the relationship? Why do they believe? You know, there's a lot of things that we kind of on this. Yeah, it seems like they're more familiar maybe with the family, and.
It seems like the specific claim is that the officers on duty are friendly with this person and they're choosing not to enforce the Massachusetts anti-idling law or some law against reckless driving because they are on good terms. And it seems like that's something which is possible to investigate, right? Whether, I mean, I doubt the person is watching the hearing, but it does seem like there are other opportunities to, like, get to the bottom of the actual thing if they complained about reckless driving or something at the time of the event. Or, I mean, I want to say go to the keyboard about if there is some legitimate reason why, like, the traffic around the school in some way is you know, have two people block him in his driveway and then he can't move forward, or who knows what the situation is. Like, those are things which the transportation board can change signage, can do other things for. But I guess I'll take your side and ask the direct question. in your opinion as the police investigator for this, you know, was there any evidence of favoritism towards this individual that prevented what would normally be enforcement of these? No. Yeah. Is that, I mean, yeah. I think we're
That's a fair, representation. So we're just, that's what we're wondering about.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I suspect that we don't enforce the Massachusetts anti-idling law in general very often.
Yes.
And even I just checked the FAQ for the Massachusetts anti-idling law, and in the enforcement suggestion, they suggest you're starting at your local board of health, because enforcement personnel cannot respond to every complaint about idling vehicles. I mean, I don't know if that's any more effective than the other, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'll just state my personal opinion is given the fact that I doubt that we have cited anyone for the anti-idling law. Maybe that's a question you could ask. It doesn't seem like there's a limited evidence to indicate that we're not choosing not to do so in this particular case because of some personal relationship.
yeah, well, I agree that the anti-idling law is definitely secondary from my point of view. I was more concerned about why there might be consistent behavior in that particular regard, and what underlying thing is going on with them. So,
I mean, I'm kind of curious about what, assuming for the case this is, the worst possible version of this complaint is true, and someone is like screeching forward and backwards to try to save 2 spots at once. Do we have, what is the question for Blue Boys? What is the provision of
I was gonna say,
Massachusetts law that would cover that? I mean,
if observed or.
It's not unrelated to like trying to save spaces and during the winter with space savers, because similar like aggressive behavior sometimes occurs there.
Yeah,
But-
I mean, we talked about like if witnessed, if we had evidence, like there's an operating to danger
Operating.
charge, but the nature of the complaint, how it's come in, the time that's lapsed, it would be appropriate at this stage to go forward with that.
I'll say my personal interest is I've been involved with the Driscoll School in trying to figure out, once the new Driscoll School was built, what the best traffic patterns are, where we should have our crossing guards work, how we can best keep kids safe getting there. And I know, given the time period, around 8 a.m. around all our schools is always kind of a madhouse. But again, this is mostly for the benefit of if the complainant is watching. There is a Safe Routes for School committee, I think, at every Brookline school who works on exactly these issues. And if there is a legitimate issue, either with the kids getting to school safely because of the behavior of a person, or because of signage or something that makes it that parents are trying to park someplace they shouldn't, those are the kind of things that we are really interested in the school community on working their ways with transportation board. I think the Safe Routes for School works with the transportation board on that.
So would it be appropriate to forward, maybe redact it, maybe not, this complaint to a transportation board or a school or the kind of the school group that you mentioned? Just to see if there's anything interesting that could be there.
It would the one bit of unredacted information is which school it is, because we do have a different Safe Routes for School at every school.
Well, I can certainly find out. I know which school it was, so people original.
Yeah. I can potentially work. I mean, I can find the right people who do Safe Routes for School at a school.
Yeah, I don't think there's signage or anything that would have prevented this.
Yeah, again, without knowing why they're trying to keep that space clear, I'll say, like, there are persistent issues at the Driscoll School with, even though it's signed as no parking in these dropout hours, so the parents have spaces to park, the residents will park, contractors will often park in the space of the parents, and including double parking sidewalk. It's a madhouse around 8 a.m. And I think not really related to this, but at Driscoll, we've asked for some extra enforcement by the police occasionally, so that the homeowner, like, doesn't take very many tickets for the people to sort of get the idea, but enforcement just before at like 7:30 a.m. to make sure that the residents who are parking in schools reserved for the in spaces reserved for the school drop off get the message that's not acceptable, because it just makes everything much harder if you cut the spaces assigned for the school in half, because half of them are occupied by residents or other people. Anyway. Yeah, I have no idea if that sort of resident versus school drop off conflict is what's happening here, but it is familiar to me from other schools.
Thank you.
One just very tactical point that we
Yes.
addressed, the redactions in the PDF are not complete. So I don't know if we pull it off and then do a properly redacted one, or like just we have to, I don't know how bad it is. But yeah,
I now know what school it is too.
Why don't we
I
pull
don't
it
know
down
if I can legally
Okay.
modify what's posted at this point.
and then do the proper?
yeah, should be pulled down probably.
So thank you for pointing that out. All right. ICE report from Deputy Superintendent O'Neill.
This might be pretty quick. Been no new reported ICE activity that we are aware of. By the Brookline Police, not by the Brookline Police, but that the Brookline Police Department is aware of. At the station or elsewhere in Brookline. Nothing new to report.
Always what I hope to hear.
Good. Okay. And thank you. Any discussion of future topics for the agenda?
Yeah, website. So Sarah and I met about, I'd like to get that into the agenda for next
Sure.
meeting.
Website?
Yeah, website for sure.
That's for PCAC?
PCAC
Thank
website,
you.
yeah, just review, we have some potential changes just to walk through for the group.
So it'll be John and Sarah.
Yep.
Great.
Probably town meeting warrant article review. I'm a co-petitioner on an article related to ICE enforcement and EPD. I don't know, Chief Pastor, if there are other warrant articles which could be of interest.
There were 4, so 17 and 25, which I think
Those are the
were
ones I,
supposed to be heard last week at the select board. There's a public hearing, I think, in front of the AC on April 6th, if I have that right. And then either 17 and 18 or 18 and 19 would be moved by Andrew Fisher with regard to like surveillance technology. They're linked.
So I wish to remind the members that a review is not possible. You can have public hearings on warrant articles, but like you can't just discuss them as part of the agenda.
I think we can't make a recommendation without a public hearing. Is my
So you wouldn't be able to vote on them.
right.
Like, so I'm gonna just question the usage, like why, what, a discussion without a vote is.
I'm agreeing with you, Sarah. I'm giving it, I'm leaving it to our chairs. If you feel like we should make a recommendation on it, it has to be noticed as a public hearing of on these articles, and members of the public always have the opportunity to speak here, but it has to be noticed as that in the agenda. If we just put it on the agenda without explicitly noting it as a public hearing, we're allowed to discuss it, but not make a formal recommendation.
Given the time crunch, my preference would be to encourage people to tune in to the AC hearings, at least on 17 and 25. That would.
Yeah. And I'll say that my personal opinion is I feel like the PCAC should be aware of the articles, and this is sort of what I was calling for, sort of a brief survey either by the department or by the petitioners, but that I'm not sure I would recommend that the party actually make a formal recommendation. I don't know how much you would add given the select board of the ACs, but again, I'm deferring that to the co-chairs. I'm just saying, like, yeah, as Sarah says, you do, if the committee is going to vote, it has to be noticed it's a public hearing. Otherwise, we can talk about it, but we can't make a formal recommendation.
Do you think it will be in terms of do you think it would be important for us to be able to vote on it?
Let me,
I question the use of a discussion that does not result in a vote.
yeah,
And I agree with Sarah. I think that sometimes even, I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes I might even not have a vote until I get to town meeting and hear both sides of the argument if I'm in between. I don't want to be put in that position of abstain, and I just don't think that, I don't know, we can't open up a meeting to public with all the AC activity going on right now and all the.
You also need
CAP
to invite
subcommittee.
each of the petitioners and any.
Yeah.
You would need
I
to
guess-
invite the petitioners to present. You would need to.
Yeah,
my
invite them
position
if
is, I
possible.
think the committee should be aware of it, so that if someone asks at town meeting, like, you know, what is the PCA's position, we can say, we decided not to have a vote, or we decided to have a thing, but like, we should be aware that those things are here. I'm not gonna take a position as to whether or not we should actually issue a recommendation at this point.
So it's warrant number 17 and 25.
17, 25,
And
and 8.
18, 19, 17, 18, 19, and 25.
17, 18, 19, and 25.
Yeah.
All 4 are on the agenda for tomorrow night's select board meeting. I
Oh.
let them know that I am not available. I was on last week for 17 and 25. They didn't get to it. I was hoping that they could put that off another week. And then 18 and 19, Superintendent Campbell will be on. Our thoughts on how they would impact our operations.
If the select board is already hearing this, why? What?
Like I said, I'm not making a strong recommendation. I just feel like,
I don't think they're voting on it tomorrow, but I think they're at the public
Yeah.
hearings for tomorrow.
Well, if it's heard in a public forum before the select board.
yeah, sorry, I don't actually know, I'm not really familiar with the contents of 18 and 19, so I don't know. I don't have an informed opinion at this point whether or not our expertise as the TCAC is useful or has anything to bear. I am a co-petitioner on 17 and 25, so I'll sort of disclose that. In that case, I think it's been very useful. The information we've gotten at the PCAC about ICE operations has been sort of useful to me as a petitioner. I don't know that there's any additional, anything that I'm expecting from the PCAC in terms of offering an opinion on the warrant article itself. I really do leave it to your discretion. You should look at the warrant article, decide whether you think the committee has something to say.
Ron and I will take a look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? We discuss? Okay.
I'm gonna ask that we never mind. It's not gonna happen. It doesn't need to happen in April. It needs to happen in May. Never mind.
So our next meeting is April 27th. All right. April 27th. With that, if there's nothing else to be discussed or brought up, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Yes,
I'll second that motion.
Christine. How do you
Yes,
vote?
yes, I'm just in a car. Yes.
John.
John Hilliard, aye.
Scott Manning, aye.
Yes, hey, Ron.
Ron Wilkinson, aye.
And Paul Yu says aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the police department.
And just for the record, we are closing at 9:11.
Thank you.
Yeah, long one.
Good night, guys.
Good night.